Good evening, everyone. As stated, my name is Thomas Kim. I know many of you, and I want to thank the TCMS Physician Wellness Program for entrusting me to facilitate this session in the wake of our collective loss. I also wish to extend my condolences to all of you and state very clearly that you are not alone. In fact, I'm told that registrations for this event are well above average, which I interpret as a wonderful expression of love for Dr. Lindley Dodson and the strength that ties our County Medical Society together. And whatever may come moving forward, the TCMS Physician Wellness Program is here for you to support whatever needs you may have. I'd like to display the contact info, which I'm going to keep on my screen through the session, so feel free to jot it down. Speaking of screens, if I could, I'd like to invite everyone to adjust their viewing experience to make sure that they have gallery view up rather than presentation mode. So rather than seeing my big face for radio, I'd like you to see all of the panel participants. And for those of you who have shuttered their cameras, I know you might be in your PJs or eating or running around with the chaos, but I invite you to turn your cameras on. So I have made the decision to ultimately forego didactic visual aids and share with you and explore a handful of ideas. But as you listen, feel free to look at each other. And once again, remember that you are not alone. But to start, I have to confess that, I kind of really struggled in putting this session together. My training typically demands a compassionate detachment in order for me to be of service to my patients. But as you can imagine, this skill set can falter when you're both processing a loss while assisting others to do the same. The only time that I remember this happening was way back when I did some Katrina and Rita support, having lived so long in New Orleans. But I've been asked to talk about this idea of a path forward. And it's an obvious and likely shared goal that we all have. But I find myself having less than full clarity on what my destination might be right now. Moreover, my ultimate destination is unlikely to match yours. So we begin with trying to construct a navigation strategy without a destination in mind. There's a saying that if you wish to better understand your present circumstances, you look to your past. And if you wish to know your future, you look to your present. Right now, I imagine your present selves are all feeling and thinking a great many things, most of which are not pleasant. Me too. I encourage you to acknowledge these feelings and tell yourself that this is okay. A common fallacy in mental health care work is the pursuit of normal and the absolute avoidance of distress. The reality is that I want all of us to feel good and feel bad and everything in between. There are, however, things to consider as you acknowledge your feelings. For those of you who may have seen my previous talk on worry, I referenced the stress hormone cascade and how chronic worry hijacks our fight or flight system mediated by the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And while many of you may have long forgotten your neurobiology and chemistry, there are additional processes that are relevant to acute adverse traumatic events. Following such an event, it's the amygdala that effectively triggers your stress response, including the activation of your hippocampus, which is intimately involved with memory and learning, and along with your prefrontal cortex, which ties memory to emotion and behavior. So if you're going to remember anything about the brain, it's this. Our brain represents the most sophisticated organic computer in existence, but it's nothing like a digital computer. Our brains are not designed for data storage and perfect recall. It's instead designed to attach emotion to thought, memory, and behavior. The higher emotional tone of a traumatic event, the more vivid the sense memory becomes. Moreover, whatever behavioral response you experience following a traumatic event can be reinforced, risking the development of a negatively reinforcing cycle of maladaptive coping responses triggered by negative thoughts and emotions. And for anyone who's experienced acute traumatic events, it can be overwhelming to be awash in numbness, fear, anger, and profound sadness. But before you believe that this is all just endless doom and gloom, remember that we are remarkably resilient organisms. My personal process following recent events has been to revisit the words of Viktor Frankl. If you haven't read Man's Search for Meaning, or It's Been a While, I strongly encourage you to read or listen to this seminal work. There are a number of lessons to be mined out of this relatively short book, but here are some passages that really stand out to me with my latest reading. One was, suffering is an ineradicable part of life, even as fate and death. So suffering is one of three ways that people can find meaning in life. Frankl goes on to say that the way in which you process inevitable suffering creates an opportunity to add deeper meaning to your life. This is largely predicated on our natural ability to choose our approach, which in current speak is otherwise known as positive cognitive reframing. Apologies for the gender pronouns in this next Frankl quote. But he who has lost faith in the future, his future was doomed. This passage speaks to a second path to meaning in life, purpose through work or deed. While I have been intentional to not specifically review recent events, I will say that Lindley Dotson represents the best of us. Someone who clearly found deep meaning and purpose as a physician, wife, and mother. And to borrow from Frankl, who actually borrowed from Nietzsche, he who knows the why for his existence will be able to bear almost any how. A third passage would be, love is the only way to grasp another human being. The third path to meaning in life is simply love. Love inexplicably shields us. It lifts us up. It sustains us. Love helps us see and enable our true potential and the potential of others. It is, according to Frankl, the ultimate, the highest goal to which we aspire. Accepting that suffering is inevitable in no way dispels love, but instead, love helps us find our way through suffering. A fourth and final passage from Frankl pertains to the idea of happiness. Frankl writes that happiness cannot be pursued. It must ensue. This is a reminder that happiness is not a destination or a goal. An active pursuit of it misses the point, as happiness without meaning is shallow and ultimately unfulfilling. Upon discovering meaning in life, happiness becomes a natural byproduct of that discovery. Please know that these shared passages are intended to be thought-provoking rather than therapeutic. The purpose of meaning through processing suffering, purposeful work, and unqualified love takes time, effort, and most importantly, the inclusion of others. For right now, we should remember to not deny our grief and pain. There is no value to simply telling ourselves to get over it or make the best of a bad situation. I'm also not a fan of framing things as happening for a reason, as it pulls the focus outside of ourselves. We are, all at once, incredibly powerful and frail social beings. And with what precious time we have, can and should be in the pursuit of meaning in life, wherever and with whomever we may find it. So once again, if you find yourself roiling with unhealthy or unhelpful thoughts and or emotions in the coming weeks and months, it's okay. Remember that one of the strongest, bravest things that any one person can do is ask for help. You are not alone. The TCMS PWP is just one potential helpful resource. Your family, your colleagues, your clergy, your friends can all assist you in processing and reconciling this or really any tragic loss you may have had encountered, especially in this terrible last year. You can also count on me as a resource and are welcome to reach out to me anytime. I've actually intentionally left some time on the clock so that we might process and heal a bit as a community. I've always been fascinated by the cultures of Ireland, Mexico, and New Orleans specifically around how to process loss and death. Whether you've ever attended an Irish wake or participated in a Day of the Dead celebration or gone to a jazz funeral, there's typically equal parts of laughter and tears at these gatherings. I very much like the act of keeping those that we love in our lives through remembrance and specifically through storytelling. So if anyone has a smile-inducing story that they would like to share about anyone that they have lost, I personally would love to hear it. And so trying to navigate this complicated system, if you'd like to share a story, you can raise your hand in the chat. In the participant window, there should be 3 dots and there should be a way to raise your hand. Depending on how many people raise their hand, I'm going to start randomly just selecting folks through the list, and I'll unmute you and you're welcome to tell the story. It's okay if it chokes you up a little bit, but again, I want you to find the smile. I want you to find the joy in said story. If we don't have any takers, that's okay. I have a story locked and loaded, which I'm happy to share, but we can also observe a moment of silence for Lindley, her family, her practice partners and staff, and really everyone that we've lost of late. So I'm sort of scanning the list here. Any takers? While people think about it, I know this is, but you got to remember, we're not alone. We're all together. And I'm so grateful that everyone who turned on their camera, look at all these people. It's incredible. Here's my story. And it's actually not my story. I credit it to my wife, Catherine, who many of you may know as a PD orthopedist here in town. Catherine and I moved here to Austin back in 2009. And as a female surgeon, PD or not, I'm sure all the women surgeons in the call know it's a rough life. And she would come home beaten down, just raked over the coals. And when I would ask her how her day went, I will never forget. She was like, "Oh, I met the coolest group of ladies in the cafeteria." And she would talk about how Lindley would be so supportive and so lovely, along with this just core group. And she would actually look forward to coming to lunch and then going back to the salt mines and getting beat upon again. Recently, my wife came home and she looked a wreck, raked over the coals. And I said, "What's going on?" And she said that she was in clinic and a mom was kind of looking at her oddly. When Catherine asked her what was going on, the mom said, "I'm not sure if I want to share this or not," but pulls out her phone and plays a voicemail from Dr. Dotson. The mother had called Dr. Dotson to ask about her child who had broken herself and that they were trying to figure out the care plan and manage it. And she had left a message for Lindley that she was going to see Dr. Sargent soon. And in the message, Lindley goes on and on gushing about Catherine's the best in town and doing all the things that she had clearly done back in 2009. And my wife just lost it. And it was just such a lovely moment. And it's one that I know that Catherine and me by extension will hold in my heart forever. It is a testament to what we can be in this incredibly difficult, challenging life and profession. And do I have any takers? That's okay. You don't have to talk. If you don't talk to me, I strongly encourage you that you talk to others, right? We get through this together. And I'm just going to take a beat and we're going to take a moment of silence in respect and honor for all the people that we've lost. I want to thank everyone for their time and attention, and to the TCMS PWP for arranging this session. Once again, their contact number is right here on the Chiron right here. My orientation is weird. I'm not a newscaster here, but there. I want you to be well and know that I wish for meaning in your life. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope everyone has a lovely evening. I believe